So of course in my chaotic, brilliant mind, I decided to add even more weight to the walloping projects that I have going on right now. And instead of finalizing one video and audio cast, of which I have scripted, I've decided to make it a 3-part extravaganza in which all parts will correlate to hauntomantic tenets. And in a way, it's a perfect kind of distillation through medium as a, praxis, in that it will culminate in a new foundation, in a new era, and a new chapter. And I thought the best way to do so would be to look back 3 months of, I think, the ultimate setup of what the dimming room was, then to harken back to just 3 weeks ago when I was in the, let's say, the throes of a magnanimous, transformative moment, which could or could not be, leading to the third, which I'm saying will be in 3 months from now, which I hope is the culmination of everything that has happened before. The reason why I'm starting with the dimming room is because it is a foundational element to the practice of hauntomancy, which is my anarchic art and magic processes. It can get real woo and it can get really ho-hum, and that's by design. It is, in fact, and by definition, and corny so, Pragmagick. So hauntomancy is why we are here right now. I know that in future edits of what I hope is a quick turnaround for this little quick 3-part series, I'd like to bookend each one, or at least introduce each one, and I might dip into the hauntomancy practice quite a bit. And I thought, well, unless you're an avid reader of my Substack, keatsross.substack.com, or as I like to call it, the Haunt Manual, then you probably haven't been privy to the living grimoire that I have been writing and publishing for the last 3 or so years. And it's a living grimoire because it is in continual kind of birth and evolution. It's being published as it's being revealed. And it all started back with the basic foundational aspect of wanting to commune with the past and with frayed tethers of personality and persona, and through the artworks I've transmuted over the last 3 or so decades. I'm lucky, and it is pretty nominal, that hauntomancy was born from someone or an artist such as myself who has been releasing and publishing, original music, writing, blah, 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 since I was young. And so there is a, body of work. Whether you can call it a body of work or not, by the merits of its quality, is up to be, debated. But it is a body of work because it has been long toiled and available to any looky-loo who would like to look. And it has garnered, over a couple dozen albums of original music, many journalistic and essay writings, lots of fiction sprinkled here and there, video art, short film, like through the multimedia extravaganza of whatever I could pony my hands on to bark with the ghost that's inside of me, to make it real and to dance with it. I have utilized it, and I've utilized it through analog technology, through digital technology, through prior to social media, through social media to now the death of social media, through, cyberpunk whims and fancies to AI being a sore, like an open wound in some cases. So I've kind of traversed that liminal space between centuries as a prototypical millennial. And us millennials, I think, are in fact the liminal generation. We are the prototypical crossroads generation, where we knew what was before, we were mired in it, and we were also mired in what came after the digital revolution. And I was savvy enough, I was crafty enough to figure out recording and releasing music on my own through digital means at 13 years old. So from 13 to now, I have had this huge oeuvre of work and documentation and journalism of different eras of my life and different eras of the self. And battling through mental health, I don't want to use the big T word, but just for brevity, trauma, through abuse, through addiction. These have been talismanic testaments to every era of life that I've lived. And in 2022, I noticed that there were ghosts still lingering throughout each and every era of my life. Things that were not ratified or danced with. And instead of wanting to change them, I wanted to name them, and I wanted to dance and create with them. And there's a reason why at the end of creating an album, the emptiness attacks and it feels insatiable, because it didn't hit the mark of the vision and it wasn't quite there, so let's do it again in a different way, but maybe we'll get there this time. And I really wanted to study what those elements were within me that was keeping me from evolution in a way, that was holding me back. But at the same time, and what I've come to understand were actually like very motivating, and progressive kind of features. These aren't demons, so to speak. They are not malefic, but they're also not wholly benevolent. These are memories. These are experiences, and they are not sullied by the whims of truth, I should say. They're defense mechanisms. It's lore, it's story, it's narrative, and I wanted to be more in tune with the author, which is sometimes me, sometimes it isn't. In any case, that's how Hauntomancy was born. And it was all born through my sacred space, which is my creative sacred space that I also do, metaphysical experimentation, magical ritual, all of that. And I've called it, since I've been utilizing that confluence of art and magic, any sacred space throughout the years has been my dimming room. And I won't go too deep into it, but the dimming alludes to a place where I could dim the contraction that makes things fathomable to kind of, break open the head more. And in, Kabbalah, the zimzum is the contraction. And so I used to say, here you can dim the zimzum. And this is an infographic from the Hauntomancy Primer that I'm currently working on and finishing up. And I am here to try to breeze through it and to go over maybe the bigger points of the entirety of the thing as it's still growing and creating unto itself. Inspired by the works from like Derrida or Mark Fisher as cautionary tales for nostalgia and like the horror of these like uncommuned or tethered ghosts of the past, but not so pop culture driven and more introspective and self-reliant, which is why haunt is in the name, because there's hauntology as a part of it. And I've written about the differences. There's glaring differences between hauntology and hauntomancy on the Substack. But I will just say this, that hauntology posits to be more of a critique of the unevolution, or how should I put it, the stunted evolution of society at large, pop culture and nostalgia bait, and this creeping horror gasm of not pursuing or really gaining that mettle of, revolutionary kind of ideas. Like, we've hit a fulcrum point that is stagnant. And I've taken that and I've looked at it in more of a retrospective, introspective, positive way, where I'm not trying to change the things of the past. So I'm not nostalgic, If anything, I'm trying to understand, learn with it, dance with it, and create something new, to give a way out. So hauntology is more of a critique, and I would say largely a negative one if it's not an aesthetic, which is, the aesthetic is mired just in pop culture nostalgia. Hauntology being, in the philosophy, being the criticism, hauntomancy being an actual practice, being an actual action. And that's what brings us to the dimming room. And so here is kind of a goofy infographic I've designed with me in my hauntomantic garb, with my onesie, guitar, as you can see. And here, in every sacred space, I've coordinated quadrants for creativity and, for exploration. So up here you can see in the room I had like a broadcast kind of area, which is where I would liminal stream or live stream. And over here it would be where I would capture, which was kind of tethered to the liminal stream, but that's where I would record the video and everything. Across the way, let's see if I can do this. There we go. Across the way we get into the audiomancy, where the performative kind of music creation and songwriting with amplifications live in room, Same with video, where I was experimenting with, live projection and video art and videomancy. So there's the somatic angle, which is of the body working, in this shared continuum of biology. And then there's the psychic reverie. And it has all of these quadrants and hits, and really what I've considered them in the dimming room to be battle stations. These are all altars and antennas of how to dance and, how to amplify your signal to the other. Whether it's literally through ritual, which you can see I've actually posted it down here. Oh. Through ritual, design, writing, craft, or it's through any of the means. And foundationally to hauntomancy, a dimming room or a sacred space is so necessary, as I think it is in any metaphysical praxis. So in the creation of hauntomancy, I've been able to distill it into not only semiotic kind of sigils or glyphs, but also in transpositional kind of factions. And the way I do this is through an equation of threes that I call the troikatyke. Now, the troikatyke, as most of you have probably noticed, is this three-pointed, tetherless triangle, a symbol and sigil that I've used for a very long time. And quite simply, it just connotes not only the, macro and micro of hauntomancy or the troikatyke, but it also elicits the idea that there are three factions to everything, or to any practice, whether it be artistic or, woo-woo, metaphysical. But it's also tetherless because it is how you are to tether that triangle. So that's why it doesn't map out. It's not cartography of path, it's cartography of point. And the Troikatyke itself, this symbol, is made of three components. There is a foundational aspect, which we'll call the tyke. Its seemingly contradictory aspect, the contrike, and then the confluence of both, though neither either the tyke or contrike. It is both, but not, the amalgamation of both. It's something new from both, and that's what we call the vertyke. And this is just getting into the weeds of like the semiotics of the symbol itself. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because keep this in your mind, that this symbol is a portal. And this symbol is a portal not only literally, because once it's connoted, you will start to break down all aspects within the creative process, or even your daily routines, into the magnanimous qualities of this equation, but also because anytime you see it, it connotes to, revel in the factions that maybe aren't specified. So I might get ahead of myself here. But anyway, so that's what this symbol is, and you'll see it all over Hauntomancy. You'll see it all over Pragmagick, all over We the Hallowed. I've used it for years and years and years, and this is what that means, the Troikatyke. I have some text in here. You can't read on the projection. It's fine. We're moving along. Within Hauntomancy, you are dealing with the self. And the way we differentiate the eras or personas of the self is through the form of the phantokon. And the phantokon is the Troikatyke, or that symbol of the self-spectre. And the self-spectre is you, altogether, your metaphysical beingness, right? As it is now, as it will be, as it was. And through that metaphysical movement or magical process, and that self-spectre in movement in any way is called a Geist, with the Z. So a Geist form is one of the Troikatyke aspects of the phantokon. The tyke is the spectre. Now the spectre I use to connote a temporal self. It is your experiential memory of self. It is the self already lived. It is the collection of lore and self and narrative. It is the main character of the past. It is temporally based. That is the self. So now, its seemingly contradictory part would be non-temporally based, usually. And that is an aspect of self. And that is what we call the aspector. And the aspector lays not within time, but within action, within presence, within force, within movement. And so it is a space relative phantokon form. So if the spectre is temporal, we have the aspector being that of a space. And this allows for not so much the hardwired memories of experiential selves, but these aspects of your hidden personality that you knew of, that maybe you grew out of, or the aspects of personas, or the changing, mutating, forceful operations of connecting yourself to the present in forms that you do that is through the aspector. And it's vertique, the prospector. And yes, I did draw that. Isn't it beautiful? Obviously, these still need a lot of work, not finished. But anyways, the prospector is the neither, either, or, the specter or aspector, but both into something new, not yet known, or is imminent, or is not yet divined, or is probable, is prospective. It is the prospective self. And usually, this is the self of which we are trying to commune the most with in our day-to-days when we're future casting, when we're working on the future, when we're trying to build a self that isn't yet realized. That is the prospector. In the greater works of Hauntomancy, because the rituals are actually based on the Geist forms, starting with Spectre, then the Aspector, then the Prospector. Don't we all just want to work on casting the future? Absolutely. The issue is when you do that without communing with the past, without giving space and echoing the forgotten synapses or untethered things still barking in your immediate space, then you can't get to the prospector. So I learned the hard way through the creation of this, praxis as an entirety, that I had to go through the hard knock specter dance. I had and am still kind of reeling from the transmutation of the aspector, because I'm taking from both of those things to create something new. It is a Hauntomancy ritual in and of itself to work and focus on the sequential foundational Fantacon. Geist form of the Fantacon is, how we are relating ourselves or our beingness through these pragmatic or magical works. They are also the general names for, or like the shorthand for the focus of Hauntomancy rituals. This so-and-so working could be titled something else, but you might see specter within the name, and that's because that connotes that it is a temporally based, kind of memory-driven, dance or communion with the past styled working. And thus, specter, aspector, prospector were the foundational Hauntomancy workings in that trifecta. So, how do we commune? What is the formula to dance with the specter, aspector, or even the prospector? That comes in through the function of the Geist. And its troika type is called the howl round. And that is taken from an old Pollyanna way of saying feedback, or like audible feedback, a feedback loop, a howl round. And what this is, the Geist function is the formula, and it is also the motto, it is the action, it is what you can imprint in any processes to break down a processes, to reveal next steps and maybe hidden intentions within any processes, even if it's just a painting or if it's, holy guardian angel, gleep glop gloop, or whatever. Most of you know this troika tyke, this howl round, its tyke is dissolver. That is the dissolution, to make opaque, to burn away, to kind of to cleanse and to burn through. And I think it's really revealing that in this alchemical kind of function that you don't start with assessment, you start with a hard look past, a hard dim, because to get through any problem or issue, or to really distill something into its prime, diamond form, at first you have to you have to make it opaque. You have to get around it. You have to look past it. And I'm not saying look past it to find the answer. I'm saying, like, this is the equation to remind you, if you're in a roadblock, that it's probably something very obvious in front of you to look past. Or maybe your intention. This is where you're going to need to fine tune that, because maybe it's the word or the syntax or the psychological hang-ups in how you've written this processes, even just the grammar. Like, it's a way to look, to make sure you note and look past all that. And then once you are able to kind of dilute, right, to dissolve these processes, this ritual working, this work of art into its, fighting form, or the deep intention therein, that's when you echo. You echo the shit out of it. The thing with echo here is that it is call and response. You have to be actively clapping to get an active reverberation back, right? And that's a big difference from the next one, because there's a lot of confounding both of this one and its vertike, which is resonar. But here at echo, this is, again, in the presence realm, right? This is of space. This is of somatic kind of activity. This is where you punch the things that need being alive again, alive, right? This is when you find those nuggets and those machinations to work towards that intent that you were able to, dissolve everything else into. That's when you punch forth. And hopefully, when you have come bound and fallen in love with the process of creation and art and magic, you will be at the resonar faction. And the thing with this formula, and the difference between resonar and echo, is that resonar exists without you being there. Resonar exists without you being active. Resonar is the clap back without you actively clapping first. This is the penultimate of every creative kind of work, of every practice, of every habit, of every ritual. You want to get to the point where you're not thinking about it, you're not active about it. It is, in a way, the precursor to the dissolving or the dissolution, because it is not even, it's starting to leave your mind. It exists without you there. It has become its own egregore, its own beautiful construct to live its own lore and its own thing. Dissolver. Dissolve and make opaque the toiled tethers of then, because you remember it's in the temporal or past alignment, right? Echo, the active call and response, the earned tethers of now, of this immediate space, and resonate and emanate the conjured self beyond time. With or without you, this working, this creation will haunt on. To haunt on is to resonate. The beautiful thing about the Troika-tyke, again, that symbol is a portal. We can implant it into something like the dimming room and break down even the fit. If the Geist function was the HowlRound, the Geist form was the self-specters, the Geist fit is the dimming right itself. And the dimming right happens in the sacred space of the dimming room. But the dimming right also conflates actual mediums, tactile mediums, And this is for me mainly. I want to change this to make it a bit more overarching. Because, my tyke, right, was psychography, or like the psychological cartography of the self through the hearing or active participation in musical kind of ritual. And the documentation of sort is that construction of it all together that haunts on through media and through practice. So this is really about this troika type, or this dimming right altogether, is the dimming right of basically my current stasis within creativity and magic. It's psychography, audiomancy, videomancy. Psychography could elicit writing, and writing, or the art of writing itself too, is fascinating because it is very temporally charged, because you aren't actively participating in the now. You're recalling or capturing or writing the memories of then, right? So it is a temporally charged thing. Music, it's especially the somatic kind, and we stress the somatic in We the Hallowed, and especially in Hauntomancy, to have a physical anchor while your psychic fucking brain bleeds, you know, trans-dimensional color schemes, like, is incredibly important, which is why just creating something on the computer isn't good enough. Just mouse clicking isn't good enough, you know. But then again, that said, just banging a drum isn't good enough. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. So yeah, this is really my dimming right, or my Geist fit. If I was to transmute this into an overarching thing, I would use the shades or the factions in We the Hallowed. I would think of every dimming right needing to hit a quadrant to attain a penultimate quadrant. And so an overarching dimming right would need to assess the psychic, right? It would need to assess the psychic self prism that you're kind of your tuning fork, if you will, for everything. This you know, the psychic self with the somatic self in this shared reality, and these rules and physics and stuff that we've all agreed upon and kneel about. You know, that's its contrike. That's the psychic's contrike. And both, you know, kind of combined and commuting, you know, what is that vertike between psychic, somatic, and let's put a pin in it, or answer at home. I think it could be temporal shade with the somatic shade, because if you're actively working in this, you know, with the aspector kind of suit, if you will, of presence and motivation within the temporal presence, or that shade of the specter, you know, you would think that the vertike would then be the psychic shade. So what I'm trying to say is, it is maddening and fascinating that as something as simple as just the schema of this simple glyph, just these 3 dots in this, you know, structure, elicit this much, you know, expansion, or dips into so many ratitudes. That's what I mean. This is a portal. That was kind of the ritual semiotics in graph form of Hauntomancy, or how to commune the self-specter through the Geist of dissolving, echoing, and resonating, you know, time, mind, space. And here I have some fun kind of fan outs of what those tykes are. So in the specter kind of tyke, remember it's temporal, which is the dissolver, to dissolve time, right, within that form. Something more pragmatic would be meditation, as a very specter oriented dissolution of your surroundings and of the self, of the ego, through meditation. It concerns itself then, you know, with memory and thoughts. And then over here, the aspector, which is active, so that would be, you know, through the echo of action, so very somatic kind of oriented. And then the resonator of the prospector, which is, you know, the communion of the whole, the resolve and the resonance that it's culminated into. And that's basically the ritual semiotics of what that Troika-tyke means and its many machinations. All right, so the spectre working, how we got here in the first place. It was time specific. So I was in a bad way in 2022, and I kept realizing, I think everybody does this, they harken back in their mind to like, how do I compare this to when things were good, when I had a boon in life? And I kept going back to the year of 2017. 2017 to me was this emblematic, temporally displaced idea of where the current trajectory I'm on has come with. It's where it's the year that We the Hallowed really got going. It's the year Pragmagick started. My first, out and about metaphysikal audio sigil with Dakota Slim's Cactus Crown, Zorro coming into my life. So 2017 in my mind, I was like, well, how do I invoke the ephemera of that year so I can bring it to now and, bask in the glory of whatever I was doing that brought in such magnanimous time during 2017. And so using specified and 2017 specific talismans and through orientation, deep cartography of ritual orientation and talismans and specters, basically using all of the workings, by the way, use the Divergent Magic ritual or the right cycles in here as the foundational organizational structure to create these. And they work hand in hand, and it's also going to be a foundational text within the tethers of We the Hallowed too. So, as well as, Eric Millar's disruption generator and the other oracles he made. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Just to say that they all combine. The Troika-tyke, if you will, of We the Hallowed works is the Virgin Magic Grimoire, disruption generator, and the tethers. Those are the three very foundational texts of We the Hallowed. So there you go. That's the Troika-tyke of the foundational text of We the Hallowed. Anyways, so utilizing the Virgin Magic rite cycles that I've created and use, and utilizing the ephemera and talismans and media and actual, tools, I constructed a very beautiful and flamboyant audiomancy ritual. Because that year was such an audiomantic one for me, I captured the ritual in an audiomantic kind of improvised, original music, practice. Sorry, I keep saying Sorry, I say sorry. And you can read about that on the Haunt Manual. After doing that first ritual, I was thrust back to Portland, back to where I was in 2017. I got a job offer right away after that and was shot back down. I had to stay at the house where I met Mary, my partner who I met in 2017, in that very house with the same company again that I hadn't worked with in years, in the same quadrant. It was like I overshot and I didn't have it focused, or I was asking the wrong questions. I was trying to invoke the wrong things. I kept obsessing about the year. And it gave me everything it could from that year with physics and the inability of time travel and all of that in mind. So it's like, here's the same structures, the same atmosphere, the same, machinations, but that's all we can do for you. Maybe it's here, maybe it's this place, maybe it's Portland, maybe it's these elements, these unchanged elements, you know, that you can invoke. And luckily, you know, I wasn't ready to move full back in Portland, so after a month and a half or so of living out there, I came back to Seattle and got to working again, because I was like, that wasn't quite it, but it worked so well that it fascinated me, that it was so ramshackle and kind of crazy. And this is why I believe you can't get to the prospector of anything without going through these trials, like the Spectre, without finding that it wasn't the year, you know, it wasn't the temporally displaced self I was after. So maybe it was an aspect. Maybe it was something that I was really honing in on, or you know, practicing during that time, that was the reason for such a large boon in my life, and I need to get that back. And after the Spectre working, I thought, instead of a temporally displaced self, something that was time specific, maybe it was aspect specific. And all I could think about was I was creating freely during that time. I had little care for the judgments of others, or making, you know, financial means from it, or not that I ever really do anyways, but there was something special about that time where I was just mad fire conjuring. And it was because I didn't get a lot of sleep, because I would spend my nights like I did in my youth as like a podunk kid in the desert, late into the night where everybody's asleep, and I'm toiling away like a mad wizard in my, you know, bedroom, making mutant melodies and weird instruments and circuit bending. And there was a large part of that I was doing in 2017. So I thought, that's the aspect of self I was missing in 2022 that I needed to invoke, which was the late night tinkerer, you know, the working, the creative abandon, the untethered by anyone else, the sheer creative barf. Actually radically different musically, another audiomancy aspect, right? This time I changed my persona. I made a new mask, in that I made this actual ritual garb mask, and decided I wasn't going to use anything I had used in the last ritual. I was going to be completely experimental, use nothing but circuit bent instruments, no guitars, no live drums, all drum machines, all Casios, and that birthed the Ectogasm record, which is one of my favorite things I've done, because it's so unchained to anything before it. And it really is like a film score. So its resonar, right, in its function, was this brilliant record that came from it. And absolutely just embalmed me with the need for creative abandon, or don't hassle me, man, I'm working, you know, kind of late night fuckery. But again, once you start to see that that's not the final processes, though, I need to somehow commute the memories of that temporally based self with this motivated hunger for creation and creative abandon. But I also, there's runoff from this. There's a naysay part of that aspector, and that was, I was alienating myself. I was being shut in, and I'm still kind of reeling from this. I didn't release things. I stopped putting out podcasts. I stopped working on a record, put that record out on tape and nothing else, and started over on that record for the first time in my life. Instead of just finishing an album and putting out and moving on, I said, that wasn't good enough, let me back at it. And that's where I'm at today, is finishing the debut Rebel Relator Roz record, toiling from you know, mad tinkering and overworking and alienation and not having, you know, the feedback, the howl round of the outside. So I knew that the true, you know, prospect of the self-spectre would be a way that dances with both the aspector and the spectre, the temporally displaced, the lost, forgotten synapses or personas of self, of ways of being, and a way to transmute them with the, you know, the new intentions and new wants, and fine-tuning after working both of those. The prospector, which you can see in the resonar function, which you can see Ra's out, or Revelator Ra's, that persona is actually the prospector of Revelator Ra's. It is the culmination of all that came before with the hat, you know, the mask. It uses elements, even musically, motif-wise, pragmatically, artistically. It is, Hauntomancy is self-sample culture. I can crate dig my own music and recordings and creations. Never do I need to worry about trends or how things are going, or, you know, signing off samples, mostly, because I'm working with the ghosts of self to create something new, to create a prospector, a new creation from all that came before, and that's what this is for Hauntomancy as a whole. There's a lot more to be said here, but I am working the macro of the prospector ritual is the tethers for We the Hallowed, is this, the primer, the distillation of years of creative metaphysical writings and creating my own magical and artistic system, is the debut album from Revelator Ra's, who is the aspect or the persona of We the Hallowed and of Hauntomancy, and the author of the Divergent Magic Grimoire. Author, you know what I mean, designer. So it's a culmination of all that came before into something new. And it is tiring. And the reason why I am putting the Troika-type system even in this new 3-part series for Pragmagick was because I didn't feel good just putting out a section of it. I needed to really sit and dance in and convey the portal of the Troika-type, even within how the episodes are constructed. The first part, temporally based, spectre-based, is going to be from 3 months ago when I was giving a tour of the dimming room and where I was during that time. The aspector, the prescient, you know, prescient, the now, the pumping here, call and response. The aspector, part 2 is going to be 3 weeks ago. So 3 months and then 3 weeks ago when I recorded myself doing an off-the-cuff impromptu monologue talking about when is an artist ever truly finished, because I was going out of my mind with how much shit I was making and creating that I needed to figure out a thoroughfare to finish these things. That was 3 weeks ago. And the Prospector, part 3, will be everything that we're planning and hoping, and the culmination of all that. The announcement of relocating back to Portland, the birthplace of all of this, the perfect ellipses as an ending to the first collection of Hauntomancy writings. What started getting thrust there when I wasn't ready with the Spectre working, of course, gifts me the return there through the Prospector working. And we're back at it again, you know. So there's just this magnanimous culmination that's happening through, you know, music and We the Hallowed and Hauntomancy especially, and even in life, and the troika-type systems of life with Mary, Zorro, and home, you know, or structure, I should say. The home troika-type is Mary, Zorro, and here, or I should say Mary here, and or no, Zorro here. You know what I mean? It's, you can switch them around as you see fit because they do have attributes in both. But that is the three. Everything is broken down into those troika-types, and you can break them down into functions and forms, and design and fit. So it's magnanimous, and that's why I'm here with Mary out of town, screaming at a camera, late night, not in the dimming room, to convey that the dimming room, as we know it, just behind this wall, will come to an end. It will transmorph, it will transmorgify, it will transmutate, it will trans into something else, as it always has, as it always will. And that's the resonate, or the resonant aspect of that specter, of the dimming room, of the sacred space. Things are changing, and I needed to somehow, maybe I can use something from this to help convey just the magnitude of all cylinder lore that is happening in my life right now. You know, not accounting really even for astrological things or things in the world, just like my presence through all of this. It's all coming to a head in a beautiful, you know, evolution of self, and a new era is beginning, and it's exciting, but it's also sad, and I want to give some resolve to the dimming room that helped birth all of this here in Seattle, in this house. And that's where Hauntomancy lays now. This still needs a lot of work. The primer, again, it's just an infographic primer with some writing in it. But you can read all about Hauntomancy through Haunt Manual. And it'll be easy to find each chapter because I signify it with Haunt Manual in the title, meaning it is a chapter of Haunt Manual, of the Haunt Manual, which is the Manual of Hauntomancy. Alright, that probably took way too long, way longer than it needed to. And if you're still watching this, I applaud you. I hope I conveyed something, that there's something I can pull from this. I don't want to edit anymore. Don't want to edit anymore. Alright. Whoa. Holy shit. I said alright and it shut down. I didn't do that. I'm telling you, everything is fucking working with me, man. Sorry. I'm not absolutely freaking out, but these synchronicities and these fucking paranormal awesomenesses are happening. No signal. There's nothing but signal, if you know what I mean. Alright, I gotta go. Good night. Goodbye.